Good evening, everybody, and welcome to We the People. Tonight, We the People meet Erik Rydberg. He's a candidate for Secretary of State of California. He is one of many candidates for Secretary of State of California, which is really cool this time around. We need a good one. And he's one of two Green Party candidates, although he's the first Green Party candidate we've had on this program. We did have the other Green Party candidate on Progressive California. He's also the only Indigenous candidate, and I find that very fascinating when I talk to him about some of that history, because there's a big difference between Native American history, as I understand it, and the American history that I learned. So we're very excited to talk to Erik. Erik, thank you so much for joining us on We the People.
John, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to get to know you. Before we do, let's bring on the lovely Laura Livengood, because this is an engagement broadcast, and she's going to tell everybody how we engage. Laura.
Yes, this is a engagement broadcasting. For you are watching live, you have the unique opportunity to ask questions of our guests during the show. If you have a question for Erik, please write the word question all in caps or tag me, and we will stop at appropriate times during the show to ask your questions and get his answers.
Thank you so much, Laura.
You're welcome.
And hi, everybody in the audience. I see you there. Hi, Jeffrey Pearson, Lynn, Vermont. Nice to see you guys. Thank you for all the hard work you do with putting We the People together. Those are some of our volunteers right there. So they make this show possible. And I just want to get that right out the board. Erik, you are running for Secretary of State, which is an interesting and powerful position if you know what it does. I didn't know that until Bernie Sanders. And you were a Bernie Sanders delegate. So tell me how you decided to run as a Green for this role.
Absolutely, John. Like you mentioned, I ran for district delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2016 in Northern California, District 1, Congressional District, California. I, just like many Bernie Sanders supporters, the draw of those values that Bernie was talking about, healthcare is a right, education is a right, these kind of progressive values are clearly mainstream populist values that the majority of Americans agree with. So we saw a huge turnout for Bernie Sanders in California in a big way.
Yeah, we did.
As well as across the country. I was one of the many people when I registered Democrat. I actually ended up I wasn't registered Democrat before, but when I saw what was happening in Arizona with the 5-hour lines, basically the Democratic Party there cut. There was multiple polling stations that were cut. I think it went from 200 down to right around 40 or 60.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And so there was like 5-hour lines. People get heat exhaustion. That's where I think the term socialist pizza was coined, because people were sending pizza out to everybody. Stay in line. We got to vote. And later, my friend Jeff Woods, among other people, testified in court that they were purged from the voter rolls.
Yeah.
Several thousand people. That's when I first felt that being registered anything other than Democrat in this current situation might actually be a hindrance for me getting my vote counted. Obviously, there was a problem in Arizona. Fortunately, it didn't stop there. In New York, not only did the Democratic Party close the primaries, and in New York, there's 3.2 million independents, but also over 100,000 people were purged from the voter rolls in Bernie's hometown of Brooklyn.
Right.
When that happened, that's when I made the decision to actually re-register, to make sure that I wouldn't face those similar fiascos here in California. Unfortunately, it didn't stop there in New York either, with the Board of Elections and Bianca Perez, that disaster.
Right.
It went right on to Nevada with Roberta Lang, longtime Hillary supporter, had donated $10,000 to Hillary's campaign. She was the chair of the Nevada Democratic Party. She made a last-minute rules change. Bernie's caucus had won Nevada for Bernie, and Roberta came in with a last-minute rules change, put it to a yay-nay voice vote. It was very obvious that the nays very much had it. She dropped the gavel, declared that the yays have it, and then called the police on everybody. Yeah.
I remember that very well.
Right. It was pretty hard to forget. I don't know if you ever saw Asia Zamora's video. she live streamed, but she was a delegate there, and it was just like heartbreaking. Like literally, it brought me to tears because of just the violation of people's right to vote. And even the Hillary delegates there, many of them were tearing up their credentials and walking out and saying, this is just, it's not democratic.
Yeah, we actually made a cover of that. We were doing a program called The Real Newsroom back then, and our cover basically had the wall of police, because there was a wall of police that you put in front of there, and it looked like a Nazi meeting. It was just frightening, and so we photoshopped Hitler in there just for fun. So
it was. Yeah. I agree. I mean, that's not far from reality.
No, and we're a lot closer to that Nazi reality now, I would say, with what we're seeing with ICE and the way they're functioning, operating like basically a Gestapo, separating children from families. We were just talking about Humboldt, and you were just talking about the what was it, the light protection and what your guys were going to do with the sanctuary city. Just talk about that for a second.
Well, maybe we can get back to that in a little bit.
We can. It's you want to finish your story on why you're running, which is very cool.
How I got to the Green Party.
Yes, I'd love to know that.
So, like many Bernie supporters, I'm at home watching in terror as people's vote, or people their right to vote is being violated all over the country. California being the last state to vote, the state with the largest electoral votes. We pretty much had to witness all of these horrible things coming to pass before we finally got our chance. And when we did finally get our chance, or at least the day before we got our chance, the day before the primary here in California, the Associated Press put out that Hillary Clinton had already won the primary, that she'd already clinched the nomination. They did so very dishonestly by tallying up the superdelegates, the count of the superdelegates vote, along with the pledged delegates. Since for those that don't know, there's two kinds of delegates when you're counting up the votes. There's pledged delegates. That comes from our regular vote, the democracy, voting. That's the people. Then there's superdelegates, and those heavily tilt the scales. And as Debbie Wasserman Schultz said, they're there specifically to make sure that establishment candidates don't have to compete with grassroots candidates. So not only is that system in place, but they have the Associated Press come out and say that it's the day before California voted that the primary is over, she had already won. If that wasn't a direct intent to suppress people and make people not want to come out to vote, I don't know what could have possibly worked better besides using a massive media outlet.
Sure.
And on that day, and that brings me to running for Secretary of State. And on that same day that the Associated Press put that out, Alex Padilla, our current Secretary of State, and the senatorial president here in California, Kevin De Leon, were campaigning with Hillary Clinton on stage the very same day. So having your Secretary of State, your chief elections officer, for those that don't know, Secretary of State in California, their responsibilities include being the chief elections officer, the one that actually has the task of making sure all votes are counted, that all county registers have accurately and transparently collected and counted all the votes. That is one of their responsibilities. And our Secretary of State was clearly showing favoritism and campaigning the day before, and unfortunately it doesn't stop there. When California came time to vote, there was massive discrepancies, particularly with our no party preference voters. No party preference, many states refer to that as independent or declined to state. Independents are the largest voter bloc in America right now. And so here in California, there's a thing called provisional ballots. It's the Secretary of State's responsibility to delegate the education and delivery of the ballots and the education process that takes place at the county registers, so they know which ballots to give our voters. So a no-party preference voter is automatically given what's called a provisional. In the primary, the provisional ballots don't have a presidential candidate on them. So we knew, California being the last state, many independents were going to come out and want to vote for an independent running on the Democratic ticket, Bernie Sanders. Right? So a lot of these county registers did not get the proper education to inform our no party preference voters. California is a semi-open primary state. That means that certain parties, you're allowed to request a crossover ballot. So if you're no party preference, you had to know if you wanted to vote for Bernie, you had to know to request a Democratic crossover ballot. The education did not go out appropriately to the county registers to let our voters know that. And even worse, it appears that they were told not to give them Democratic crossover ballots. So they were forcing people to take these provisional ballots by the thousands. Caused a huge fiasco, especially considering that we have mail-in ballots here as well. So when a no-party preference voter is at home and they receive a provisional ballot through the mail and there's no presidential candidates on it, they were freaking out by the thousands and running down to their polling stations and saying, why can't I vote for Bernie? Why can't I vote for Bernie?
Right.
And that's just really the tip of the iceberg of things that transpired here. There was even a lawsuit recently ruled against Alex Padilla for throwing out 50,000 ballots regarding the signatures. Basically, a county register saying, oh, well, we can't verify the signature, and throwing out 50,000 ballots because.
And that was throwing out 50,000 ballots in 2016. They're talking about it now.
Yeah, and now it's finally coming to fruition that this is voter suppression. The ruling came down from now on. All voters are given the right to double check their signature from here on out. But that was not something that Alex Padilla did on his own behalf. It didn't come down from the Secretary of State's office. It's only happening through a court ruling and the lawsuit of the people trying to hold Alex Padilla and the Secretary of State's office accountable.
So what happens? I mean, you can't give them the vote back. You can't say, hey, Bernie, if we actually gave you all these votes, you would have won California. And, what do you do?
Yeah, they're moving. Well, I mean, they're just they're moving on, It seems like the plan of the Democratic Party was to basically commit so much election fraud at every turn, in every corner, in as many ways as possible, that it would have been very difficult to pin down everything in a timely manner to be able to do anything about it. Right. And that's why it's taken almost 2 years for us to get lawsuits finally ruled in our favor.
Right.
And it's basically too late now.
Right.
Back.
Right. And so, if I understand right, you're running because Alex Padilla did a crappy job in 2016.
Yes, a very insufficient job here in California. It's infuriating to me, given the history of democracy in America. Our state, our federalist system is actually was taken from the Iroquois Confederacy by the forefathers of this of the United States. Right? The Iroquois referred to it as the Great Law of Peace. Right? The founding fathers of the U.S. government wondered how many of these big nations got along peacefully, and it was through the process of democracy. Now, granted, all the women voted, so if the chiefs stepped out of line, it was the women's responsibility to hold them accountable, and they can vote them out. So one of the first things America did was say, absolutely, no, women can't vote. You actually have to be a man, a white man at that, and a landowner. So that was one of the first things, in my view, that America has done to really dishonor the process, this indigenous process, decision-making process of democracy. So it's infuriating to me about Alex Padilla taking such steps to really to violate this process, democracy.
Sure.
Any just and free society has to have a functioning democracy, and that's what it's about.
Well, and he's just following orders, right? Which doesn't excuse anything, but he's not making the decisions there. He's doing what other people say. I told you there's going to be a history lesson, everybody. So I wasn't aware of the Iroquois Confederacy and democracy. However, I want to just say I think you're giving too much credit to the founding fathers. They may have seen a democracy in Native Americans as they were wiping them out and said, neat, but we like what the Greeks and the Romans did better because it includes classes, and that way we can put people in subservient positions. So that's our democracy. It includes rules that benefit white people, white males.
Yes.
So,
well, to touch on that before we move on from that as well,
please.
What was going on with the Six Nations, their form of democracy, the Great Law of Peace, was a direct democracy, right?
Right.
What the founding fathers, the U.S. government put in place is a representative republic.
Right.
So these are you're not voting for a decision. You're voting for a person who's going to make that decision on your behalf.
And what's interesting, I just want to tap on that because that's very important. That's very important. And I just want to make sure when you say Six Nations, you're talking about basically before we started wiping everybody out, most of North America was all together in a big group of people that were talking things out and working things out, right? I mean, that's what you're talking about, a coalition.
The Iroquois Confederacy.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to say that history isn't taught in American schools. I didn't grow up learning that history, you know. My understanding was, okay, we came over here, we found Native Americans, we argued a bit, and then became friends, took over all their territory, and here we are.
Yeah, that is. So let's start there before we move on.
Sure.
The Wampanoag and the Pokanoket, right? The Thanksgiving event, right?
Right. Sure.
Pilgrims were trying to, use the land in the way that they were used to back in Europe. And it wasn't working. The foods they wanted to plant wasn't working.
Right.
And so the Wampanoag, Pokanoket, one of the leading bands, the Wampanoag actually stepped in, showed them how to till the land, and kept them from being in real dire straits. And it didn't take but like 60 years before the Pilgrims had decapitated the chief and began to ran them off. They actually made it illegal to be Pokanoket. It was illegal to be Pokanoket. So you couldn't even you had to say that you were Wampanoag. And even that wasn't sufficient suppression. They ended up deporting Wampanoag to Bermuda.
Okay.
Even from the very beginning, the act of making human beings illegal and deportations have been the legacy of America.
Oh yeah.
With colonization.
White people. It goes well back thousands and thousands of years. It's not new to America, but
Yeah, Rome. Yes.
Rome was actually nicer. When they sacked an area, they made some of those people citizens of Rome. They made sure that they still had supply lines. I mean, it was, but we're a lot more brutal, honestly. America is. But anyway, that's another story. I appreciate the history lesson, and I understand why it's important to you, and I appreciate you running in that regard because we really need to update white people's history of America in a big way. Let's talk about just other issues. You're Green Party now.
Yes.
What made you switch? Right.
So it was probably after New York that I started catching on to Jill Stein talking about, hey, look, this has happened over and over and over and over again. This is not new. All the way back with Ray McGovern and the invention of superdelegates, right?
Right.
The whole reason they're there is because of a peace activist trying to run in the Democratic Party. Superdelegates were implemented specifically because they didn't want anybody like Ray McGovern ever running and winning and competing with establishment capitalists,
right,
pro-war candidates. And so that's where we got our superdelegates. But it didn't stop there. It continued on. Everybody from Dennis Kucinich to Jesse Jackson, even Howard Dean with the Dean Scream, they did everything they could to just obliterate any kind of progressive candidacy through superdelegates or by manipulating election. But never was it more prevalent than here in 2016. So I started catching wind of Jill Stein talking about this stuff. I mean, it was really hard to find. The corporate media gave more time to Donald Trump's empty podium than they did to Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, and Bernie Sanders combined. So, you had to know where to look to be able to find Jill Stein because no corporate media is going to give her, the time of day. But when I did find it, and when I did hear her voice, what she was talking was making a lot of sense. Understanding, because she's been there, right? A lot of people don't know about Jill Stein's history. She was fighting refineries in Massachusetts, and she was part of, and that was a successful fight for the most part. And this is prior to her being involved politically with any parties. But with the Democratic Party at that point was her most engagement. But they put together a coalition that actually passed campaign finance reform in Massachusetts. They did it. They got money out of politics in Massachusetts. Right?
Wow.
Jill was part of that coalition. And lo and behold, 70, I think it was 70 to 80% Democrat majority in that state overturned. And so they could continue taking corporate money. And that's when Jill Stein said, well, if this is the so-called People's Party that's representing us, and they're going as far to overturn the people's legislation of getting money out of politics, well, I think we need something new. And that's how Jill Stein came to the Green Party. And much like that, I had a very similar experience with the Democratic Party, pulling out all the stops to cheat me and 20 million some odd people that were trying to vote for Bernie. And she said she would be willing to talk with Bernie Sanders about, hey, if that party's going to cheat you, why don't you come over to the Green Party? We can talk about what we need to do to keep this actual real revolution alive, to actually oppose neoliberalism and to step away from the historical two-party corporate-ruled system. And that sounded really good to me. Because if you look at the platform, Green Party's platform is virtually the same as Bernie's. I mean,
sure.
Actually, it's a little better, right? So when I started looking through that, Bernie wanted to do free college tuition. Green Party wants to do free college tuition. They want to cancel student loan debt. Right?
Sure.
Make it a little harder. And it was, with each platform, I kept saying, oh, well, here's a party that I didn't really know. I was aware of Ralph Nader in 2000, but I never dug into the Green Party. What are they about? What are their policies? And when I finally did that, I finally actually took the time to read. I found that platform is well thought out. It's intricate, and it's everything that we wanted with Bernie Sanders, except for more. And so that's when I started paying attention. I could see the writing on the wall that if we made it to the convention, they were going to do everything they could to stop us. So I started paying attention to Jill Stein. And so June 8th, right after the California election, when all the disaster of the California election was taking place, I said, okay, well, they did it in, if you look at the exit polls data, they did this in 20 some odd states, right? If you look at exit polls, they're historically very accurate. You can go 4% in either direction, right? So an exit poll is great because, you're not asking somebody before they go in to vote. You're asking them after they come out and after they've voted. So it's more reliable. Tell you who they voted for. So you could go 4% off in the exit polls in comparison to the actual results of the election, and it'll be considered a legitimate election. And to give an example of how serious America used to take that, 2013-14 in the Ukraine, America accused the Ukraine of a fraudulent election because of a 14% discrepancy in the exit polls. Margin's 4%, right? Well, in Arizona, we had 37% off in Hillary's favor, right?
Wow.
So we're talking twice as much fraud as what the Ukraine went down. Media silence in America, right?
Well, mainstream media silence. I'm sure it was covered by all independent media.
Exactly. It's only media you can trust right now.
It is. And so maybe most people under 30 saw it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The largest group of non-voters we have in the United States. So.
Right. So, but even with all of the exit polls and the voting machines that were incredibly inaccurate compared to the hand-counted paper ballots in places like Massachusetts, multiple other states, the wild discrepancies in the exit polls, we still, Hillary Clinton did not win.
Right.
You have to get 2,383 pledged delegates to win a primary. Neither Bernie or Hillary got that. So that means it's a contested convention, right?
Mm-hmm. No, we saw that.
So,
we saw that fun.
yeah.
We were there.
Right?
We were there.
Pretty much anybody who was paying attention and had the ability was going to go out to Philadelphia after everything we endured. This crazy primary.
Yeah, we were there.
So,
did you get to go? Were you there?
I did not get to go. So how the delegation works, like I said, I ran for delegate for Bernie Sanders.
Right.
How the delegation works is, at least in my district, is 4 males get selected through the election process and 6 females get selected as potential delegates. And then based off of the primaries percentile, the percentages depends on how many delegates get to go to Philadelphia as actual delegates. I came in 3rd place, and what was really, really infuriating for me is that even though California hadn't counted the votes, they already started selecting the delegation based on the projections.
Right.
So only 2 males got to go as Philadelphia delegates. My friend Randy Grace, LGBT activist fighting the AIDS epidemic for decades, and a well-known lawyer for my district. They were the 2 that got selected, but the selection was based off of projections because they never finished counting the votes, not even until the convention. So
wow.
It was extremely infuriating for me. I have a 3-year-old son, and I was a stay-at-home dad at that time. And the deal was, if I get selected, I go off to Philly, but otherwise I have priorities and responsibilities. So, but it was very infuriating. You see how somebody who's in 3rd place, like just counting the percentages, just waiting. I'm like,
yeah, absolutely.
If anybody was paying attention to how it was going down, it was me.
Absolutely. That would be really, all of the voter BS is really irritating, the lack of democracy and the continued lack of democracy from the Democratic Party. Right
into the convention, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk to you about that and viability of Green Party and stuff, because I actually voted for Jill Stein here, because why not? Laura Livengood did. I want to check in with Laura, see if we have any questions from the audience. We do? She's not here. What do we got, Laura?
We do. We got a couple ballot questions for you. Jilly asks, in New York, ballots are public. How can we do that quickly here in California?
Now, are we talking about ballots as far as after the ballot's been cast? They're public?
She did not specify,
so,
but I'm assuming.
Well, I can talk a little bit about that. Basically, the ballots, I'm not sure that they're scanned, but that's what's available. The data can be available for people to access. It's not the personal data on the ballot, just the results, the information.
Gotcha. So yeah, that actually came as a result of the 2004 election, right? 2004, Kerry and George Bush. David Cobb was the Green Party presidential candidate in 2004. He actually did a recount in Ohio, right? That recount showed massive, massive discrepancies in the voting machines in Ohio. What ended up coming out of that was a whole new generation of voting machines. I wish they would just read the Green New Deal, just read it, because then you'll see that we don't want voting machines. We want hand-counted paper ballots, right? But we'll get to that later. But anyway, so David Cobb's recount showed these discrepancies, and because of that, a whole new generation of voting machines came out with the scanning ability. And that scanning ability, to my horror, in many red states, has been contested by Republicans, and they've gone as far to pass legislation to say, we're actually going to turn our scanners off, right? Because it's going to cost us a bunch more money to have, as ridiculous as it sounds, it's going to cost more money to go through the scans. So there's many, many of these machines, that second wave generation voting machines, that have these scanners like they have in New York, but in red states, they haven't even turned them.
Let me clarify the question. I think Jilly was saying that ballots are public property. and the results are public property. So that was, how do we get our ballots to be public property and protected in California? Because we saw, I mean, I totally agree with you about what happened the night before, the California primary, because I had dropped my ballot off and gone to Bernie's rally, and while we were at Bernie's rally in San Francisco, that's when AP announced, we were like, well, what the heck? They haven't counted my vote. So, and when you mentioned Arizona, that was exactly, the Arizona primary was the one where I was just like, oh no, they are really messing with. And then every primary after that, the one big county that could turn things would all of a sudden flip, so it was really weird. Mm-hmm. So I have another question though this is relating to what happened in Florida, the lawsuit that Tim Canova did.
Yes.
How can we ensure that ballots are not destroyed? And I remember hearing about ballots being destroyed after California too, that they just weren't getting counted and they were getting shredded.
San Diego, yeah.
In San Diego, yeah. Was that Ted Lieu's district? I can't remember. It seems to me that was his. Anyway, what do you think about that? And how can we? So both of these questions kind of go well together. How do we protect our ballots and the information and ensure that they actually get counted? Is that a pipe dream? I mean,
they were able to do it. They were able to make them public in New York. They can do it in New York. We can do it in California. I would encourage anybody who's watching to please go to the Green Party of the United States website, gp.org, and look up the Green New Deal. Most people have heard about it in passing through progressive circles, referencing FDR's New Deal. He created an emergency jobs program, put like 20 million people back to work in 6 months. But what they don't know, because they actually haven't read it, read it. Like to quote Immortal Technique, read, right? Go look at the Green New Deal because it's a 4-part program. It's the Economic Bill of Rights, which FDR wanted to do, wasn't able to get through. It's a green transition. That's what everybody knows about. Solar panels, wind farms, permaculture, putting 20 million people to work with a federally guaranteed jobs program and paying for it through MMT, because modern monetary is a reality, right? We're a monetarily sovereign nation. We pay for anything. How do you think we pay for all these wars for the last few decades, right? So the third part is real financial reform, breaking up those big banks, right? Public banking, right? Just like I'm about to go to this meeting right after we're done here, forum sponsored by the Green Party of Humboldt County on public banking, right? Not allowing your money to get sucked into the investment banking system where they can then take the abundance of having all these bank transactions and invest them in things like Dakota Access Pipeline, or invest them in things, investing in war, right? So public banking is a great way to divest from the international banking.
Absolutely.
industry. So that's the financial reform, but my platform is and I would argue maybe the most important, next to putting everybody back to work and having full employment in this country, is the fourth part, which is a functioning democracy, right? If you look at the statistics of how many people want healthcare, how many people want education, all these things that all the other major countries have, right? And if we're the richest country of the world, if we have the most billionaires and simultaneously the most impoverished people of any major nation, we have the money to be able to have free college tuition and healthcare. We can make sure that our democracy is functioning, right? So my platform is everything in there. We have to absolutely do like Germany did and rule electronic voting unconstitutional. Every vote needs to be verifiable by no specialized means of knowledge regarding any kind of techie industry. Right? Like we don't need to go, and contrary to like some of my opponents in the Secretary of State's race that are pushing for open source voting, which is a much more reliable system, but it's still an electronic system. I think we need to go the way of Germany and 59 other countries in the world that have declared 100% hand-counted paper ballots. They must be verifiable, mandatory recounts. It works for countries like Ireland that even use ranked choice voting. So if Ireland can do ranked choice voting on hand-counted paper ballots and verify it via a mandatory recount, America can do that, right? But
Sure.
we have to have a political will to put socialists in office that don't take corporate money, that want to see the people rise up and actually take the power back from this capitalist-run state government and put it in the hands of the people. Right? That's what we need. It's hand-counted paper ballots. We need citizens oversight committees like ballots for burning, right? You were talking about how do we make sure every vote gets counted. Well, here in California, we had a group because the Democratic Party's affiliates in the media canceled the exit polls for California, right? California was the only state that didn't have exit poll data.
Right. I remember that conveniently.
Right.
Did not have the data that was showing that Hillary actually should have lost had we counted all the votes. So I hear you there. With regard to what needs to change, I want to talk about, because in general, we've got problems in California, we've got problems nationally, and the Secretary of State has a certain amount of power to make sure things are good. But you couldn't come in as Secretary of State and say, all right, we're going to ranked choice voting, we're getting rid of this 2 thing. You couldn't just make that happen, right? It'd have to pass through legislation, right?
It would, but I can propose that legislation.
Right. That's cool.
For instance, in California, we had a bill called SB 1288, which would allow for ranked choice voting in general cities. Right now in California, you can pass ranked choice voting by proposition in unincorporated cities, but not in general cities.
Oh.
So places like San Francisco, Oakland, and Berkeley, they already have ranked choice because they're unincorporated.
Huh.
But in the majorities of major populous cities, they're general cities. And so what we did here in California is we brought SB 1288, ranked choice voting for general cities, through all the legislation that we needed, passed it all the way up to the governor's desk. And the governor, Jerry Brown, Democrat Jerry Brown, vetoed ranked choice voting. So we already know California wants it. We know that we'll get it. We just need a new governor. And hopefully after June 5th in November, we'll have a new governor. And if I'm Secretary of State, one of the first things I'm going to do is bring SB 1288 back up, and I'm going to demand that our new governor take a look at it and pass it. That's what I can do with my Secretary of State's office regarding ranked choice.
So with that, and I'm reading we have a slide here that we've just been talking. I've been showing these things. Got some great slides from our volunteers. This is from Native News Online, and this is talking about Proposition 14 in 2016. I didn't realize, is that what set the top 2 thing in motion?
All right, you guys, if you're ready for a bombshell. So you've heard of the Independent Voter Network, yes?
No.
No? Okay. Well, it's kind of a large publication for independents and third parties.
Okay.
They're affiliated with a group called, the website is openprimaries.org, right?
Okay.
Now, open primaries, I am totally for open primaries. I don't think that we should have a system where you're limited to who you can vote for via your registration. Like, you want to build a party, register that party, but when it comes time to vote, you should have all options on your table, right?
Sure.
So
I'm with that.
What happened here in California with Prop 15 is openprimaries.org came in with a bill, or came in with Prop 14 that said we're going to move to open primaries. But what it really was top 2, right? So in the primaries, here's how it changed. Prior to Prop 14, all third parties, all parties would have their primary, right? An internal primary, all their candidates would be on the ballot. Their parties would vote internally for which candidates they wanted to have in the general election. Then the general election would come up, and there would be a Peace and Freedom candidate, right? So Peace and Freedom, we have a coalition with them. They're another corporate-free party that's on the ballot in California. They also have an eco-socialist platform, just like the Green Party. So we work, this year we changed our bylaws even so that we can endorse their statewide candidates. So the Green Party endorsed 4 of their statewide candidates because our platform is so simple. But prior to Prop 14, there was always a peace and freedom candidate. There was always a Green Party candidate, independents, libertarians, Republicans, and Democrats. You'd have the full gamut on your ballot in the general election. Since the passage of Prop 14, now what we have is open primaries in the primary, so you can vote for anybody. But what happens is only the top 2 vote getters in that primary will be allowed on the general election ballot. So to me, it's just plummeted voter participation big time. Because what happens is you only get 2 candidates on your general election ballot, nobody in the third parties, and especially because of money in politics, like usually the top 2 vote getters are whoever had the most money
right.
to throw at the media and the campaigns.
Right.
Often it's 2 Democrats. Often it's 2 Democrats or 2 Republicans in one of these more rural counties.
Right. Depends on the area that's been purchased by the party. Right.
Exactly. But it makes it extremely difficult for independents, Greens, or any third parties to get into the general election. So it's sad because it was passed under open primaries, which is a good thing.
Right.
But what it really was closed general elections.
So it's like right to work. It sounds really good, but
Yes.
it sucks. Right.
The prettier legislation sounds, the worse it probably is for you.
Right.
And
I got to say,
Patriot Act all the way down to
Right. And thank you for mentioning Patriot Act, because I was thinking, I didn't know anything about the Peace and Freedom Party, and I saw that there was a candidate, and it sounded to me like another libertarian-ish group. So thank you for letting me know that the Green Party endorses candidates. I will understand it is not a libertarian-ish group at all.
No, Peace and Freedom is very much anti-war socialist party.
Very cool.
No corporate money. We've worked with them. We've had a coalition with them for a number of years, but we never actually had it in our bylaws that we can endorse their candidates.
Coalition is very German. You know that.
Oh yeah,
they do.
Well, most of these countries that have proportional representation, you have multiple parties. It's an actual true multi-party system.
Right.
So once again, I'm going to say to all of our viewers, please go to gp.org. and look up the Green New Deal, because in that 4th part of functioning democracy, we call for the abolishment of the Electoral College and, in its place, a proportional representation.
Agreement.
So where we don't have a winner-take-all system, 49% of the population doesn't have to go along with 50 plus 1% of the population. You actually get seats in the government for how much your people turn out.
Right.
In that case, you can have a multi-party system. You have multiple parties on the left. And if we all agree on the values, and that's why I say, really, we need a third party to break the 2-party system. Because if you join a third party, like the Green Party, and allow it to grow to the point of actually getting in and taking control of the state away from these capitalist candidates, we'll actually implement a proportional representation, and then we'll have a real multi-party system, and all parties will benefit. So if you're a socialist alternative, if you're Peace and Freedom, if you're African People's Socialist Party, if you're Movement for a People's Party or Progressive Independent Party, it's going to take you 10 years to get anywhere near the Green Party as far as ballot access is concerned. So you might as well join the Green Party, run on the Green Party ticket, build your party still if you'd like, but run on our ticket all over the nation. We're the only ballot access ready party that could win an electoral college
in all 50 states.
And we attained 48 states in 2016.
Wow.
The Green Party of the United States maintained the largest ballot access of any corporate free party in American history. So 2020 is going to be even easier, right? So come in, run as a socialist green, run as a progressive green, but let's seize the state back from the capitalists so that we can implement the Green New Deal. and get ourselves a proportional representation, ranked choice voting, all these things. Healthcare is a right, housing is a right, jobs is a right. You know? And but in order to do that, it's my belief, as well as Jill Stein, many others, John Baraka, many of the Bernie delegates, Angelica Duenas, who's running for Congress in LA, Bernie delegate Gail, who's running on the Green Party ticket for Congress in LA. Like, many of us made that analysis that you can't have forward progress if your corporate party that's funding the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Sure.
And if they're always trying to take you out at the legs, you can't move forward, right? So in our analysis, it's actually easier to build the Green Party than it is to try and turn something like the Democratic Party into the Green Party.
I would agree with you 100% that it would be easier to build a Green Party in terms of people who are willing to do work for the Green Party. However, for the Green Party to actually reach enough voters to make a difference, they would have to purchase local news networks in all 50 states or have them enough money to command media presence, because that is what is hindering the progressive movement. That is what's keeping our progressives from winning shit in the corrupt Democratic Party. And that's, you know, and all of our third party candidates is really, we have a media problem, you know?
Yes. Well, when you have 6 corporations that own all of the
5
corporate
now.
media.
5.
Is it 5 now?
Yeah.
God.
It's down to 5.
Yeah, you know, and these are the very people we're talking about. The corporate media, they are the 1%, right?
Right.
They're not about to give time to a third party or even a progressive like Bernie.
Nope. Well, they have no choice for Bernie. They will give you the time if it's worth their ratings. Look at Jill Stein. They use her as a punching bag, right?
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to go give a statement because CNN's put me on their program and I can get out some Green Party information. But really, they just wanted there for ratings. We're going to punch Jill Stein for 30 minutes while people call in and tell us about Russia, right?
Yep. I would really just want to say, Jill, if you see this, we love you so much. You are taking so much heat for being honest and being just and fighting for election justice the way you did with the recount and everything else. Thank you, Jill. It's totally unfair, and only in a patriarchal crap capitalist system like this would somebody with so much integrity like you have to take the brunt of corporate media like that.
Well,
thank you, Jill.
She's in with Russia. Come on. It's obvious.
Oh, yeah,
right. I don't know.
Didn't you see? She sat next down to Putin for
I know. I did. No one else does that.
Oh,
and,
just...
and if Jill, you're probably not watching, but if you do, I'd love to talk with you. And this network is yours. You know, the whole progressive movement needs a network that is actually focused on civics, not ratings. No offense to other progressive networks, but really we should be focused on this, getting our candidates as much airtime as possible and growing a network that caters to the progressive audience. And I think the Democratic progressives, which is going to eventually split off, maybe they split off and become the Green, join the Green Party. That would be fine. But to me, that's the Achilles heel of the Green Party. It's like, it's got all the right stuff. It just doesn't have the vehicle to put it in power.
Right. So the media, and this is why the Green Party in 2016 decided to make some specific declarations about our stance on capitalism, right? So in 2016, we passed a platform amendment saying that we are for decentralized socialism or eco-socialism, right? If you look at the trend of capitalism in virtually every country throughout history, it's a model of infinite growth, right? So when you apply that to the media, infinite growth means a handful of corporations running it all, right?
Right.
So every time you apply that model, you always end up with an oppressed labor class, right? Because in order for capitalism to function, the capitalist must have a oppressed class to ascend the ladder of success on top of via their labor. And so if you start applying that to healthcare, what do you get? You get monopolized
get dead people.
Industries and right.
You get dead people. You get people like our friends that have to spend money on that have to find GoFundMes to pay for their health care. I want to stop you there because I love what you're saying, and I want to cut in because I saw a question about media, and I just wanted to jump back and ask Laura Livengood what it was, because I think it was Green Vigilante Media that dropped it in.
Yeah, that was Mike had a question. Should we require media to give a more equal representation to all candidates and issues? And that exactly the other thing that the Greens don't have is a place on the debate stage.
Right.
That specifically. So what do you think about that, Erik?
So I actually talked about this. So after the convention, I joined the Green Party. And I got brought on as Stein-Baraka state coordinator for the Stein-Baraka campaign, Jill Stein and Ajamu Baraka. For those who don't know Ajamu, he's the founder of the Black Alliance for Peace. He's the founder of the U.S. Human Rights Network, and he was the only African-American in the race in 2016. Media was totally silent on.
Right.
And he was Jill Stein's vice president for Canada. I got to open as a speaker for him after we built 12 new county parties here in California after the convention. About 10,000 or so people directly came in on Jill Stein's website, and I was put in charge of getting them into their county parties. And we built 12 new county parties here in California. And during a rally, I got to open for Ajamu Baraka, and what my focus was on was the media, and particularly the alterations that Ronald Reagan made to the FCC concerning the fairness doctrine.
Yay.
Right? And concerning the equal time rule specifically in the fairness doctrine, which both of them are totally gone. They're gone.
Yep.
Ronald Reagan, they're gone. So that's how you get Donald Trump getting millions and millions and millions of dollars of free time, and Jill Stein, like you said, bring her on just to try and lodge some false spoiler argument, right?
Or ignore Bernie completely.
Or ignore Bernie completely either, right? So anybody who's talking about raising the taxes on the 1%, stopping the wars, all that, right? They're not going to let.
So the fairness doctrine, you'd want to put it back in place. You would.
Absolutely.
So you could push the issue as Secretary of State. That's one of the things the Secretary of State can do is like push issues, and you can say, look, in order for us to have a fair election, we have to have equal time for all candidates in California. Can that be a state level law that news channels in California have to provide, fairness doctrine? Can we do it that way?
I would love to see that, and I would fight tooth and nail to see that.
Me too.
Collect thousands of signatures or use any platform I had to see that transpire. Right?
Yeah.
But what it takes is, we have to start flexing our power. We do have the ability in states like California to put propositions on the ballot. This is what we got to start doing. Is we got to start looking down the avenues of power that are available to us and actually seizing them. Right. We can't just electing representatives isn't good enough, right? You can do almost more with a really strong grassroots ground movement and legislation, getting it on the ballot via democracy, than you can by electing the perfect candidate.
Right.
So, I would be 100% in support of bringing back the fairness doctrine, and particularly the equal time rule that says if you give one candidate free time on the media, you have to give all candidates the equal time.
Yeah, that would be nice.
It would be nice, right? And it existed before. Like we used to have free college tuition in California. We've had nice things before, right? Once upon a time, after Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal, we had regulations on corporations.
Oh yeah.
There was the Republican Eisenhower had a 90% corporate tax rate, right? The Republican, right?
Yep.
And during that time, all this "Make America Great" talk is what are you talking about? You're talking about the 1950s when, at least white people had a union job and 2 cars in the garage and a microwave and a fridge, right? And a pension and all those mythical creatures that don't exist anymore. Like,
Yeah.
that's what they were talking. That's what they're talking about when they're talking about making America great again. Unfortunately, when they're talking about it, they're also talking about racism.
And the military-industrial complex, which was doing
Yeah.
just fine and picking up the pace there. We only have a few minutes left. I told you this hour was going to go fast. I just want to say this here. You've said some things to me about the Green Party that I haven't heard said in the way you said them. And I'm going to say this now to Jilly Love and a lot of our other Greens out there. That I agree with Erik that now is a great time for us to separate out as many people and put them in the Green Party. So I would love to work with Green Party groups. Uphill Media is a 501c3 nonprofit. That's what we do. We work with volunteer orgs, and let's do more things.
I'll send as many. Right now, there's 147 Greens in office right now.
Great.
We have hundreds on the ballot right now for 2018. So I'll send as many people as I possibly can your way. In my opinion, why the Green Party is not only the fact, so there was 200 third parties that formed after 2016, right? Like, people were done with this two-party garbage, right?
Yeah.
But every single one of them is running into the same exact wall, right?
Sure.
And that wall is a national committee, right? Ballot access.
Right. All the things that the Green Party has been struggling with for a decade, and now it seems like they're kind of in a place to be legit with all of this, right? And the Dem Party is a ghost ship with a lot of people really irritated at it. I'm going to try to take over the Dem Party angrily, hostilely, without violence, but in an angry way, right? We're done with your shit.
Whatever you do, don't pick up a chair, because
Right.
then you're
No, yeah, definitely don't do that. No chairs. And I believe it's time for the Green Party to build and grow, and I'd love to work with them to do that. Thank you, Erik, for running. You're fantastic. I appreciate your energy and what you have to say and your views. Tell everybody where you're going to be right next. We got to get you out of here so that you're not late.
Gotcha. I'm going to be going to the Green Party of Humboldt County, right, which has the most elected Green Party members in any county in the United States. We have sponsored a public banking forum, right?
Nice.
Now, everybody may be aware of, things like the cannabis industry in Colorado and in California and Washington and so on. The federal government will not touch that money. So things like public banking are starting to become an option because a cash business is dangerous, right? Well, there's a whole nother side to public banking besides helping out a grassroots economy like that, process of money. And what it is divesting from the investment banks. The same banks that funded Dakota Access Pipeline, the same banks that funded Trans-Pecos and Sable Trail and Pilgrim Pipeline and on. As an indigenous person, that is a paramount that we actually defund and starve the investment banks of their ability to make investments, right? And the best way you can do it is by forming, just like North Dakota was the only state that didn't feel the recession because they have public banks.
Right.
So not only do public banks keep your money local, keep your money in the community, they build up abundance. The state's not paying to fill a pothole. If the federal government or your county's not paying for it, you can keep your money. Imagine the millions and millions of dollars that are being extracted into investment banking that can be saved right in a local bank. To where your community could use it. And so that's where I'm going next. I would say, once again, read the Green New Deal. Read it, because public banking is in there as well as many, many other things. And just the last thing to close out, I would say the reason the Green Party is not only is the structure there, not only is the values system there, the 10 key values, not only is the platform there, eco-socialism, the real analysis that we actually oppose capitalism and we oppose an authoritarian state government. We oppose authoritarian socialism as well. It's power to the people, not to the capitalists or the state, right? And if we really, really, really want to stop climate change, we're going to need a global movement. And the Green Party is the largest electoral movement in the world, 91 international Green Parties. And we all are unified by 4 pillars: democracy, social justice, ecology, and nonviolent socialism. That's what we need in this country. We need to start doing it soon. Ecological clock is ticking.
Awesome. Thank you, Erik. Thank you so much. I want to get you out here also before the sun goes completely down and it's dark there. We need to get some light in there.
Don't let the sun go down on the greens. I'm dying.
Well, you know what happens when the sun goes down? There's no solar energy, Erik.
Right. We got to get wave generation. You got to get those turbines in the rivers.
My favorite, yeah, and we got to just tell MAGA folks about batteries. Just batteries.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. Anyway, tell us about your song, Tribe Called Red.
Yes.
Why the pick?
It's a beautiful. It gets me pumped up. When we were at Standing Rock, some friends of mine had giant speakers on the back of the truck, and we just drive around camp, blasting traditional songs, straight Lakota straight, and a song. So this song is a wonderful blend of traditional Lakota songs with modern electronic music.
Really? Okay, great. I'm looking forward to it.
Fires me up and gets me ready to take the power back from the corporate state, turn it back to the people.
Nice.
Right on.
Awesome. I have not heard this, so I'm excited for it. Laura Livengood, who do we have coming up on Wednesday for We the People?
On Wednesday, we have Brian Kim, who is running as an independent, no party preference, in California Congressional District 53. And he is a cool dude, and we're looking forward to talking to him.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for running, Erik. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Laura. Thank you for having me, John.
You're welcome.